Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided.
This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlawn Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlawn Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome. We're back with Access to Democracy. I'm your host, Alan Miller, and we have a guest who hasn't graced our stage before, but who I know for years. And Greg Konat's claim to fame is that he's married to Teresa Daly. After that, everything is downhill. Teresa, of course, very well known in the Twin Cities and particularly in the Burnsville-Eagan area as not only a former public official. Greg, of course, was city manager of the city of Burnsville, part of his checkered past, but your wife ran for office, and she was here some years ago. Sure. We haven't had her on since she went into this new business, as a matter of fact, which we probably ought to do.
You really should.
Because she has a very interesting business.
Yes, she does.
And, mention it to her when you get home.
I will. I'll tell her. I think she'll look forward to the opportunity.
Now, you, in addition to having attended about 5 different colleges and getting masters and going to Harvard, among other things, also have a long history of civic, really, work. Why don't you give us a little bit background, Greg?
Okay, thanks, Alan. Well, you know, I guess I would look back on my experience, and it's been about building community or serving community. And for me, I started out in municipal government, working for cities. So I worked in Nebraska and South Dakota, and then came to Burnsville, as you mentioned.
And came here for the weather.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
I love it. Actually, the quality of life, to be absolutely honest. And so worked there, as you know, for about 20 years in Burnsville, and then worked at Dakota County for a while. And then after a while, it was time to think about
Director of Physical Development in Dakota County.
Dakota County, yeah.
That means people have to work out and get
No,
muscles?
it had more to do with the physical environment, roads and parks and that type of thing. But yeah, no, it was a good experience working there.
And then, of course, city manager there.
And I was city manager in Burnsville, had a couple of other jobs. I tell people they kept trying to find a job that I could do. So I had 3 different positions at the city. I'm grateful for that experience. And the last 11 years was as city manager.
And then you went on to 360 Communities?
Right. After leaving the county, it was time to think about, you know, what else might I do besides local government, and had an opportunity to go 360 Communities and spent almost 4 years there working on community engagement and helping with the different programs at 360. And then almost 2 years ago, I went over to DARTS as the president of DARTS.
And tell people about DARTS. Everybody knows DARTS because they've seen the buses going around.
Sure.
DARTS is a lot more than just buses taking geriatrics like me to different locations.
Yeah, it sure is.
So explain how you came to DARTS and what DARTS really does.
Well, DARTS is almost 40 years old. Next year will be our 40th birthday. And it was founded by Dick Graham. I'm sure you have run into Dick or know Dick.
I know him well from Inver Hills.
Yes, exactly. And he's been around the community and
Terrific
doing wonderful
guy.
things for many, 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 many years. But he founded DARTS and basically started out providing rides to older adults 40 years ago, almost. and then recognize that older adults also had other needs besides transportation needs, and primarily in Dakota County, not exclusively. And so DARTS has been providing services to older adults for 30-some years now. And as you said, most people think of DARTS and they think of transportation, because in the old days the buses had DARTS written on the side of them, and they were going all over the county. And we still do transportation today. We provide about 200,000 rides a year, both through Metro Mobility, Transit Link, and our community fleet. So that's a big part of what we do, but we also provide all kinds of other services for older adults and caregivers.
Now, you're headquartered in West St. Paul, is that correct?
We are in West St. Paul, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And everything emanates or works out of West St. Paul. But you do have still vehicles, quite a few of them, and I think you still have quite a few employees who are not volunteers, right?
Right. We have over 1,300 volunteers every year, and we call them our unpaid employees, if you will, because they're so valuable to us. But we have about 160 employees at DARTS, doing work both with the transportation work, and then we also provide services in older adults' homes. We're in about 1,100 homes, helping older adults live independently. And then a variety of other areas where our people are providing
It's
services.
almost like home nursing in some respects, except it's not the medical aspect of it. It's really people who are in their homes, want to stay in their homes, as I understand it, and they can't quite get everything that they need or do everything that they need, so the volunteers provide help.
That is exactly right. You know, we've got about 10,000 people a day turning 60 in our country. Everybody knows that we have this age wave, and so more and more people.
Would you believe I turned 60 10,000 times?
No, I wasn't sure if you had reached 60 yet, Alan. But, so that's part of what we do is go into people's homes, whether we do home cleaning, we do meal preparation, grocery shopping, visitation. Sometimes people don't have family around and they need to, they don't want to be isolated, so we're in their home spending time with them. So there's a variety of things that we do. And the other thing that we do, oftentimes an event happens and somebody is now less independent than they were before, and so they contact
Illness
DARTS.
strikes or something like that?
Yeah, it's hard, a variety of things. And then they contact us, and then we kind of join hands with them on the aging journey, and we're with them as long as they want us to be with them, helping them access resources, some of the other services that I talked about.
And what do we charge for this?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because what we do is we work with the individual, and we have a sliding fee scale. So depending on the person's ability to pay, some people pay the cost of providing the service, and some people pay nothing, and there's something in between.
That's what I wanted to get to. The fact of the matter is, the service is there whether you can pay for it or not.
That's right. I wouldn't want anybody ever to fear calling DARTS if they're in need, because if they can't afford it, we do what we need to do so we can care for people that aren't able to pay for it.
Now, all these employees that are on staff have to be paid. Even you probably have to be paid.
Yes.
Questionable.
I'm
but
not. Yes. Whether I earn it or not, that's a
that's
whole
a-
other subject.
So, there has to be a way. Does the state provide money for you? Where do you get your financing from? How much does it cost to run this operation?
Well, we really have three centers of expense centers, if you will, and the largest one is our transportation, and that's rounded off. That's about $5 million, and much of that money to do that work comes from funds from the federal and state through the Metropolitan Council. So the Metropolitan Council, we provide Metro Mobility and Transit Link, which are programs, if you will, services of the Metropolitan Council, and we provide that in Dakota County and a small portion of Ramsey County. So we also have a business called Vehicle Maintenance Services. We maintain all of our own vehicles, buses and vans, and we do that for other nonprofits as well. And that's a cost center for us, and we make about $1 million a year there, and that's our operating cost, and any profit that we make goes back into the parent company, Darts, to pay for services for people that can't.
So I can bring my car over for an oil change?
Well, I think we would do that for you, yes. But most of probably 75 to 80% of the work that we do is on what is called STS vehicles, special transportation service vehicles, with lifts, wheelchair lifts.
That was something I was going to bring up, because I've seen some of your vehicles and people in wheelchairs, so that which poses an additional problem, because once they're in the vehicle, they have to be secured so they're not rolling all around the vehicle. Obviously, you have to have trained personnel to do that, but I've seen the vehicle stop, the lift goes down, the wheelchair's put on, up into the vehicle, secured and off. So again, you provide that type of service for people who are not as mobile as they would like to be.
Oh, absolutely. So the Metro Mobility is designed exactly for the ride you just described, or somebody that may not be need a wheelchair access, but somebody that may have some difficulty getting around for one reason or another. So our drivers are trained. They go through extensive training, and we provide the training, and then all of the licensing and requirements that the state mandates when you have precious cargo like that. And then the transit link section of our work, that's really a dial-a-ride. Basically, anybody can call that needs a ride, and if they live less than a quarter of a mile in the wintertime or a half a mile in the summertime from a fixed line, a bus stop, if you will, we'll pick them up and take them to either the fixed line transit that Metropolitan Council runs or Minnesota Valley Transit, or we'll take them to their destination if they can't get there via the fixed routes. So those are the two major areas. And then the third fleet that we have is what we call the community fleet. Darts owns those buses, and we provide service to basically anybody that needs it, but mostly we provide it to older adults. We'll go to assisted living facilities, pick up several residents, take them shopping, take them to doctor's appointments, that type of thing. So that's kind of the three transit areas.
I understood, I spoke to somebody who said that Darts has somebody who does her shopping for her because she can't get out in the bad weather.
Right.
So that would that be a volunteer, or would that be a staff person? You give them a list of what you need, and they do your shopping for you?
Right. Usually it's a volunteer, almost always. We work with volunteers, do training with volunteers, do background checks, and then we place volunteers with older adults that need help. And oftentimes people will do that for several years. So they get to know the older adult, they pick up, as you suggested, they'll pick up their list of things they need. Sometimes they go with them, the older adult goes with them, and sometimes they do it for them, do the shopping, bring it back, spend a little time with them, and a great relationship develops oftentimes between the volunteer and the older adult that needs the help. So it's great for the older adult, as you might imagine, but it's equally great for the volunteer and the value that they get out of it as well.
An older adult who's living here, who doesn't have family, maybe had a spouse who passed on or something like that, children living, as mine do, as far away as they can from where I'm located. This provides really a social contact as well as a necessary contact.
Oh, by all means. And we deal with that a lot, where there's an individual living at home alone and family is at a distance, and so we'll connect oftentimes too with the family. So the caregiver who might be further away, a loved one caring for the older adult, we'll develop a relationship with them as well, let them know what's going on with mom or dad or whoever. So it's a great service, and what we find is a lot of people aren't aware that it's there for them to. All they have to do is call.
Well, when you leave here, you're going to leave with a DVD that you can put up on the Darts website if you so choose, and it's like salesmanship, except it's free salesmanship for people who are participating. If they're able to pay, then it's what you can.
Yes.
But what about fundraisers and donations and things like that? You must be involved in some of that also.
We are, and I spoke about the three business areas. I talked about transportation and our VMS, and I failed to mention that the other third leg of our business, if you will, is providing caregiver support and support to older adults in their homes. So both the caregiver sometimes needs help as well as the older individual in their home. And we can't always, as I mentioned, the older adult can't always afford that. So we raise about $600,000 a year to offset the cost of the programs for older adults and caregivers, and we do that in a variety of ways.
That's what I was going to say. How do you do that?
Yeah, we go into the community, and we have great supporters that every year will do the best they can to give us some money to help us with that. We do some fundraisers. We have a Spirit of Giving banquet December 7th. That'll be our second year, and anybody that would like to come to that, they can do that. It's $100, and all of that money goes to pay for services to older adults.
And it's tax deductible.
It's tax deductible. Ames Construction.
Which is really important for people to know.
It is important. That in that case, 100% of it is tax deductible. Ames Construction, who I'm sure you're familiar with, very generous company that's in Dakota County, pays for the dinner, and so when you come, Alan, and you give us your $100, it's 100% tax deductible, and all of that money goes to offset cost of programs for older adults. So we do that, and we write grants and that type of thing as well. So, like most nonprofits, we have to raise money in order to serve all the people.
Particularly the last 4 or 5 years have
Yes.
been very tough for nonprofits, and it's been a struggle.
It has.
With the economy now coming back to where it was in large degree, but I don't know that the nonprofits have felt that as much yet.
Well, I think we're seeing it's picking up again. We saw donations drop off. Dollars available through foundations that had dropped off because their earnings were less due to the recession. So we're starting to see that come back. And another area is government. The dollars that were available through different government programs are less now than they've ever been. And so, and I think that's a trend that's going to continue. And so we're going to need to find ways to...
At least as long as Republicans are in the Congress. I don't want to get political much, but...
Yeah, so I think everybody in the not-for-profit world sees themselves more as a social enterprise these days. How can we generate revenue and not just rely on donations or government grants or foundations? And so that's why we have the sliding scale and ask people if they are able to pay for services that they do, and people are happy to do that if they can.
Yeah, surely. Now, I understand there's even before I get to the educational aspect, DARTS, what does it stand for? D-A-R-T-S.
Right. Well, we don't use it's just DARTS now because it was confusing, but originally it stood for Dakota Area Resources and Transportation for Seniors.
I know now.
Yes.
I always wondered.
And I get that question a lot. What does that stand for? Right. And sometimes they confuse us with DART, which is a transportation company that's located in Dakota County, but we have the S on the end, DARTS.
Now, I started to ask you about educational. I understand you have an educational arm. How does that work? What does it do?
Okay, so we really our focus, not exclusively, but we focus on educating caregivers and educating about caregivers. So we have a 7-series presentation, and we'll go into employers and into businesses to talk to their employees about caregiving. About 29% of the people in the United States are caregivers today. Typically, it's a female.
As the population is aging.
Right. And it's not just for older.
Living longer.
Right. But there's other populations that need caregiving as well, people with disabilities and that type of thing. But as the population ages, there's going to be more and more of us that'll be caregivers. So we do an educational series on that. All of a sudden something happens to our loved one, mom or dad or whatever, we have no idea how to access the system, and it's very complicated. How do we get them services? What the medical things? What about Medicaid, Medicare? How does all that work? So we provide training for people in that area, and we also provide awareness training for employers. The research that's done these days indicate that an employee who is a caregiver oftentimes their productivity will dip, as much as 18%. There's been studies done on it and that.
Yeah, they have all these additional pressures on them.
And then they themselves oftentimes become ill because of the stressors and so on and so forth. So it's a significant issue in our society, and we provide the education and support for the caregiver because we need to keep them healthy and vital to help their loved one. So that's our primary focus on education, and then we have different programs as it relates to specific needs of people that are aging.
So somebody contacts you, they want to become a volunteer. Obviously, we've seen that background checks, if they're not properly handled, can be very dangerous. We just saw that with the shooter in the Navy Yard last week, where he slipped through a background check where clearly it showed mental disabilities and problems that this man should never have security clearance. How do you go about a background check? What do you do?
Well, we have an agency that we've worked with for many years that we get the information from an individual just as if they were an employee, whether you're a paid employee or a volunteer. We send this information and it's checked professionally, and then all of the information that they find in that check comes back to us, and then we evaluate that and determine.
I assume they do background checks, employer checks, neighbor checks, things like that.
Yeah, the driver's license, any criminal records. It's significant to check the
It's interesting because Sharon and I have only had rescue dogs, and we have a Springer right now. To qualify to become an adoptive parent of a Springer, we went through a background check. I felt I was going through an FBI check.
Yeah.
And they check with neighbors. They check with the veterinarian to see if you were good to your last dog and things like that. I was very impressed that English Springer Rescue, Ezra, I think they call it, does this. And then it carried over as I was looking at notes to prepare this interview. I'm saying, well, that has to be one of the most serious aspects of what you do.
Absolutely.
You're sending people into people's homes, especially people who might be vulnerable, and
you can see
certainly
why it has to be as extensive as it is.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, so it's and people are happy to do it. The volunteers, to my knowledge, Darts has never had a problem with a volunteer and working with an older adult. So, in terms of anything significant, so that's fingers crossed.
That's a pretty good record in 40 years.
It really is. Yeah.
Is Dick Graham still active with Darts?
No, he isn't. I mean, he's a friend of Darts. I call him once in a while. But Dick's primarily working now supporting Inver Hills Community College.
And he's doing a wonderful job there. He's a member of the foundation there.
Yeah,
and,
yeah, he really
involved in so many things. He's such an innovative guy.
He is dynamic, and
yes.
he cares a lot about the community. And his legacy at Darts speaks for itself.
Good.
Yeah.
So, this is a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week operation, basically, is it not?
It is, especially the transportation side of things. We provide, as you say, transportation 7 days a week. It's not quite 24 hours a day. It's more like, depending on the day, the weekends, a few less hours, but approximately 20 hours a day. We're providing transportation services. The services when we're in people's homes, that's all about when it's convenient for them. So that could be 7 days a week as well, but typically not on Sundays. And then our offices are open, normal business hours. Another area that we were talking about volunteers and the whole issue of the boomers and their methodology, if you will, or their preferences for volunteering. And we found that if people have I think I'd like to do something, but I don't know exactly what, we found it to be really successful to have people come in, sit down and just talk about what they're passionate about. Talk about what kind of things they'd like to do. What's the difference that you want to make? And it's just remarkable the different opportunities that we create versus here is something that you can volunteer for, call this number. Our approach is more and more, tell us more about what you're passionate about. Tell us, are you looking for something long-term, short-term? I want a project. No, I want to develop a relationship. And then we match people with those needs.
As people watch this show, and we've put up the contact numbers, they can call you certainly and follow up on just that type of thing.
Absolutely. If you want to volunteer, call us. If you have an older adult that you have some questions or concerns of how best to help them, call us. If you're an older adult and you have needs, questions, whatever, call us. We have an information and assistance line, and we're always there to help. You get a live person that'll talk to you and connect you with whatever services
you have
you
a
need.
senior living alone, and they have developed a relationship with their caregiver. All of a sudden, that senior takes sick, has to go to the hospital. I have no doubt that the caregiver steps in and does what has to be done in that case until that person is out of the hospital.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's and that might be the caregiver themselves that we help provide. We do that too. We can provide caregivers for older adults, or as I said, we walk hand in hand, if you will, with the caregiver, the older adult's loved one who's caring for them. We take the responsibility of caring for them just as serious as we do the older adult.
So it's really a unique organization, and it does some really, really wonderful things for people. And you got into it.
Yeah.
And you're really obviously infused with enthusiasm.
Well, as I started out when you asked me about my background, I like the idea of helping people and building community, and that's part of what DARTS does, is how do we make the community, how do we prepare it for aging? How do we take care of our older adults that are living in the community? It's a better community. It's a richer experience for all involved when we take advantage of the knowledge and the wisdom and the love that our older adults have. And if we can, whatever we can do to foster that, keep people active, keep them engaged in the community's better off.
And we've been sharing with Greg Konat, the CEO and president of DARTS. Come back again.
Thanks, Alan. I appreciate having the chance to talk with you.
In regard